So let's talk a little bit about focus. So, one of the things that I think really is challenging for people with ADHD, and Jordan, age 28, describes as frustration, not being able to focus when you really want to. I have a bad attention span. Um, Really, I get distracted easily. People talking, one looking at something, I would just daydream off into it, forget everything I was doing, and then I'll see it start snowing, and I'll look at the snow, just something that catches my attention. So Jordan already struggles with attention, but then his self criticism about how his attention is bad makes things worse. So, what we want to do is start by accepting the brains that we have, okay? Because this is going to help us understand how our brains work so that we can improve productivity and performance. Now, metacognition, which is the last executive functioning skill to really coalesce in the really in the late 20s for people with ADHD, um, is the ability to, evaluate yourself and have personal awareness. And it's directly related to focus, because metacognitive thinking, along with self-regulation, um, helps you choose and monitor and evaluate how you approach a task, how you measure progress, and how close you are to achieving or not your final goal. It helps you transfer learning and information to different contexts and tasks by being more aware of strengths and challenges. The ability to think about your thinking, to ask open ended questions that foster self reflection, questions like, how am I doing? And to reframe that self evaluation from good and bad, to working and not working. These aspects of metacognition improve. How you perceive yourself and notice where your attention is directed. So let's make a little fist first. I'll take off my little arthritis hand helpers here. Let's make a fist and put it on your forehead. I want you to pretend this is the spotlight of your attention. So the question that we want to ask ourselves is, where are we shining that spotlight? That spotlight of our attention is directly related to focus. So let's put up in the chat some areas where you are struggling with focus. I see that someone said the video is cutting out, so I'm going to close down all my other tabs and hope that that helps. Is that a little bit better? The sound is cutting out. How are things now? I have closed all my tabs, and hopefully things are a little bit better now. So Anna says reading is something where she notices she focuses. Where else do you where do you notice that you struggle with focus? Because that ability to notice where you struggle is the first step of the process. Working was fine for me. It was, oh, things are fine. Okay, things are okay. Okay, thank you. All right, you don't have a problem. Everything's fine. Large projects. All right, large projects. Now we're back to the question. Large projects are where are where you struggle. Let's see, you struggle with retention, difficulty focusing when trying to focus, right? You're really trying hard to focus and you just don't have it in you. Listening to others, making coffee, struggling with boring paperwork. I hear you on that one. Too many thoughts. Hubby struggles with focus on the relationship. I'm struggling to focus in every aspect of my life: cooking, reading, and studying. Danae, you said studying, and Ruth, you said people. Kayla, everything is that's not fun is where I have trouble focusing. Studying, editing films, production is easy. Putting it all together is hard. Yes, because that is like actually like writing. And just one side note is that writing uses about all 11 executive functioning skills simultaneously. So editing a film and putting it together could be challenging. Sometimes there's a pause. Okay, thank you, Annie. Jax, like getting started on a task, focus or motivation. Yes. Prioritizing. It's hard to focus, but it's also hard to motivate. knowing where to start. Annalise, I struggle with focus on certain tasks at work, particularly proofreading, cooking, sitting down to do things on a computer like a resume, cleaning, listening to people talking, technical instructions and sequencing, long speeches saying the same thing, paperwork, too much needs focus, so it's hard to pick one and commit to it. Cindy, professional organizer, and your ADHD clients seem to have varying levels of focus with organizing process projects. Yes, and one of the things that, of course, affects our focus is our level of interest, right? When we're interested in something, it's easier to focus on it, and that's because of how dopamine works in the brain. There's interest, there's reward, there's pleasure, there's satisfaction. It's easier to direct that spotlight of attention to those things. It's the things that are a little more difficult that where we struggle. Claire, I'm struggling with parenting an ADHD child right now. I hear you. No problem with chocolate focus. I hear you, Susan. You're struggling even watching this. Thank you, Sonia. Just so you know, if you need to look away or pause it, this is recorded so you can come back to it. Math is your struggle, and remembering where I read, what I read, and important things. Transitioning from one topic to another and staying interested. Doing what I have to do. I would rather focus on everything else I could do. Well, sometimes that's productive procrastination, which means we do other things that need to be done instead of the main task because we want to avoid it and it's not pleasant. So you're still getting things done, but just not the main thing. Zuzi, and I apologize if I'm saying that wrong, just being present in the moment and focusing on whatever I do, sticking to an activity until it's complete, following conversations, finishing tasks, focusing on one thing at a time. Ruth, I hear you about that. Sometimes that's hard for me with my anxiety. I like want to do a couple things at the same time and then I get more agitated. Tessa, shopping list and cooking. So I hear for a lot of you that cooking is challenging. Again, cooking like writing or editing a film, it has to do with multitasking and remembering numerous steps of something simultaneously. That's going to be harder for people with ADHD because it's using certain executive functioning skills that are naturally, biologically more challenging for you. Carol, pretty much every aspect, but currently mostly AM and PM routine and job applications. Okay, starting cleaning plot piles, focusing when stressed. Yes. So one thing I want to say about this, Nadine, thanks for bringing that up. When we're stressed, there's adrenaline and cortisol that's, coursing through our brains and our bodies. And it does make it harder to focus for anybody because the body is actually in a fight, flight, or freeze mode. And that's what it's preparing for. And so what happens is that there's blood is sort of, blood and energy is taken away from the prefrontal cortex and directed toward the amygdala and the emotional brain. So, and towards the physical brain, the physiological brain to get us to someplace safe. So if you have challenges with executive functioning skills when you're stressed and under pressure, it could be even more it could be tougher for you because your brain is operating as if under crisis. Now some people actually focus better when they're under pressure. They need that fire under them to get them going, and I think that's actually more of an issue of motivation than true focus. Reality, let's see, sorry. Overthinking on certain tasks due to over focused on certain tasks due to overthinking, just spent writing 3 versions of one email. Adding references within an essay, oh, that's tedious. Prioritizing tasks, focusing on comprehension. Just to say 1, 2, 3 rather than 99 or 100 words. I see. So just, being more circumspect about what you're saying. Rabbit holes. Right. I focus on the wrong things and maybe that's choice, but I can't help myself. Yeah. Keeping enough energy to do tasks. And okay. Kayla, ironically, I'm having trouble focusing right now. No worries. That's why you're here as a part of this community. It's great to have you. Drift off, drift back, watch it on the replay. You're all good. Okay. So there are, 4 different types of focus. And what I want to say is that each of us has areas of focus that are easier for us and things that are more challenging. So it's very hard. Just the baseline is that for people with ADHD, it's tough to stay focused on a task unless it's super compelling and has an immediate reward attached to it or results in something unfortunate if it's not completed. I'm just going to throw into the chat. I've created a downloadable for what I'm talking about today. So please check this out. And Attitude, I'll ask you to, put this up a couple times while I'm talking. This is a great way for you to kind of just listen right now, and then you can see the notes later. Um, let's see. Susan says, heart. I agree to all you open people. That's wonderful. Do I see many people with ADHD that have demand avoidable profile like PDA? They often travel together, yes. 14% of people whose primary diagnosis is ADHD, that's children in particular, because that's where the research is, have have a diagnosis on the autism spectrum. But if your primary diagnosis is on the autism spectrum, 50% of those kids have ADHD. And the research is weaker in adults, so we just want to sort of think about carrying that forward. Thanks for explaining what that is. Okay, so let's look at what focus is. Focus is the dynamic process of choosing what is critical to notice or do or recall. So let's look at the 4 types. So the first type that we're going to talk about is selecting. So selecting refers to choosing what to focus on. It's related to prioritizing, which is hard for so many people with ADHD, because you have to decide what's most urgent, time related, and what's most important, value related. Selecting also encompasses time management. How long will this take? How can I accurately assess if I have a certain amount of time? Will I be able to accomplish this task? And initiation. How can I get started? What type of procrastination am I engaging in? So, what are you going to do to improve selecting? Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is you want to do a brain dump and make a very large to do list. Now, look on that list and take the 3 most pressing items from it and put them on another document in your computer or on another piece of paper. Decide which of these tasks is toughest, easiest, or medium in terms of effort, and break each one of those down into 2 smaller parts if you can. There's a method to my madness, so hold on. Next, think about how you like to work. Okay, when you work, do you want to do something easy first and get it out of the way, then to kind of warm up? Or do you want to do something hard right away and get that out of the way, and then kind of reward yourself with something easy and save the medium level task for last? Pick of your list which task fits your preferred order of activity and begin with that. And the reason that we're going to do that in this particular way is you're going to decide what's toughest, and then you're going to break the tasks down, those 3 items, into 2 smaller parts. One of the things that makes it tough to focus or get started is a sense of overwhelm, that whatever it is you're facing looks like, it feels like Mount Everest, and you can't really climb it. It's overwhelming. You can't even, get yourself on the trail. We're trying to get you on the trail and make it to a nearby marker. And so when we break things down, they seem more approachable and achievable. And when you know the order in which you like to work, it assists you in assigning a task to that order. So write in the chat how you like to work. Do you want to start off with something easy and finish with something hard? Do you want to start with something hard and finish with something medium? How do you like to work? Easy, medium, hard. Where do you want to start? This will be helpful for you when you look at your 3 tasks that you've taken from your big list. One of the reasons that we have to break that big list down into things that have to do with urgency and importance is because that big list is overwhelming and it's defeating. You look at that list and you're like, why bother? I can't get any of these things done. Or I get one done, but it doesn't feel like a success. So when you put those in a separate document or on a separate piece of paper, you actually get the satisfaction of crossing it off and that there's some space on the page. So let's see what people are saying. Um, hey, Heather. Um, Ray, always making room for improvement, even when not needed or delays or progress. I recently edited my already graded documents. So that's really interesting, Ray. So part of what I hear you saying is that you're a little bit of a perfectionist. And even if something's finished and graded, it's hard for you to let it go, to put it in the file. And you're constantly tweaking it, which means you have this sense, I would guess, that you're never actually finished. And that can be very frustrating. We want to create some open space in your life where you feel like you're actually finishing something and you're moving on to the next thing. How do you recognize you're struggling? Seems to be our issue. Jenny, could you clarify that a little bit? I mean, one of the things about focus that's tricky is you don't notice when it shifts. You know, what I like to say is like all of a sudden you're having trouble focusing. Maybe you go to the Bahamas for a minute or two, and then you realize you've been at the Bahamas when you come back to what's going on, and you're like, "Oops, I spaced out. Why? What did I miss?" And so that's part of noticing where the spotlight of your attention is. Where am I directing that spotlight? Because noticing it, that metacognitive awareness, which really coalesces around age 28 in neurodivergent brains with ADHD and around age 25 in people who are neurotypical, we want to build that awareness over time for our young ones, and we want to continue to develop it for ourselves. So Kim says easy, hard, medium. Tina, easy to hard. Rashunda, I should probably start with something hard because I have more focus in the beginning. What a great awareness. That's really important. Know that your brain gets tired over the course of the day. True for many of us. So you want to do the hard thing maybe first when you're clearest. Easy, medium, hard. I don't know how to say your name, but thank you. Easy, medium, then hard. Hard first because you're more motivated. Easy, hard, medium because I like to think I like because I think I like to do easy first because I'm trying to avoid the hard. I got it. Start easy. I'm not a morning person, so I find that that true thought works. It seems easier for me in the afternoon, and I stick to easier tasks in the morning. Easy then hard. I like to work easy to hard, but I never seem to be able to finish the hard task. Well, that's really important insight, Rone, because what that might tell you is, instead of doing a long, easy task, maybe you limit yourself with with the tomato timer, the Pomodoro method. You work for 25 minutes on that, and then shift to the harder task, but while you're still fresh, so you can finish it. Marsha, I prefer doing the hardest, longest one, but then I get over focused and never get to the easy or medium. Over focus is on the list of types of what we're going to talk about. Easy, hard, medium. Hard, medium, easy is best, although I've been known to procrastinate on easy 5-minute tasks for months. Yeah, sometimes it's like, oh, this isn't that big a deal. I'll just do it later. And then, later, and you don't get to it. I actually need to prepare mentally for a couple days before I sit down to write something. Erica, thank you for writing your name. I appreciate that. Most people who have ADHD do need to prepare when they're going to write, whether it's preparing their emotional body, their, kind of getting their clarity, or prepare the actual content of what they're going to do. You're way past 28. Okay. I focus on the physical environment first, always because it's what I can see. Never get to the stuff on the computer. Right. And so in these cases, when we talk about selecting, you really have to actually set some boundaries for yourself and use your phone or your timer to help you do that because, or a friend or a colleague or a buddy, an accountability buddy, because you'll spend your time doing productive procrastination, cleaning up your whole area and feeling really good about it, and then the day's gone by and you haven't gotten to the work tasks. Emma, my daughter age 6, sorry, goes into a panic when I try to break down a task into smaller parts because I'm giving her more advice, any advice. Right. So I think what we want to do is to work with her and saying, "I'm not giving you more. I'm taking this one big thing that seems like it's like a huge rock, and I'm trying to make it into smaller pebbles so you can like toss those into the pond instead of this trying to lift this big rock, which seems so heavy." So let's just try these two smaller parts so you feel like you're getting something done, and then we'll take a 5-minute break or something. Marcia, hi. If I do easy and medium first, then the hardest one has me working on it into the wee morning hours, and then I can't get started the day after. Right. So that's good information about yourself, which is no matter how much you want to do the easy thing, because it's just you don't want to really put all that energy out. Doing something that is harder actually will get you going. Rona, what needs to be done first to help me to get to the other pieces? Outline the project, then pick the area that motivates me the first, then the rest follows. I love that. I think that's a really, really great idea. Because what you're talking about is knowing yourself and how if you outline it and you pick the one that's most interesting, you'll have a natural kind of dopamine sort of a pathway, an uptick, which will get you started, and that'll carry you through other things. Um, Jenny, you say your husband and your teen don't recognize that they can't focus on priority items. That can be very difficult. So I think in those situations, what we want to try to talk about is using language like "I notice" or "seeing." What are you noticing? What are you seeing? And you could include frustration or trouble with deadlines. But we want to start by asking them, like, "I notice that you're really struggling. What do you see is happening right now?" Because if you ask them, "Why are you struggling?" The answer that you're going to get is, "I don't know." So try to ask questions that are more kind of conversation openers. Where, how, when, what? Jax. Um, Jax, I try to do easy tasks on a Pomodoro break, like doing the dishes. I love that idea. That's fantastic. What kind of therapy do you recommend for ADHD and anxiety? Heather, that's a great question with a very long answer. Um, in general, I would say some cognitive behavior therapy, alternating with insight oriented work, including mindfulness. Carly, I have to talk myself into it. My brain says no straight away and thinks the worst. And then I focus on the fun, easy stuff. I'm forced myself to do the hard stuff, even though I'm drawn to the easy everything, unless it's a fun, hard, and fun challenge. Thank you so much, Carly. All right, so let's look at the second type of focus, monitoring. Okay. Monitoring refers to noticing where your attention is and where it's not. You have to be as intentional about what you're not going to pay attention to as what you are going to pay attention to. And if you're focusing on a distraction, just like in meditation, when your mind wanders off into thinking, you want to bring that puppy back to what's in front of you with kindness and encouragement, just like you come back to your breath if you're meditating. So, what's a good tool to help you with monitoring? Take a minute right now and write a list, and we've done this already, of things that typically distract you. What are some things that typically distract you? We've talked about times when you get distracted and when you're struggling with distraction, but actually, I don't think I've asked this question. So maybe throw up into the chat or throw out into the chat, excuse me. What are some things that typically distract you? And don't leave anything out because we want to get a handle on what distracts you. Susan, what is a Pomodoro break? I've missed a couple of your podcasts. If you go online and you research the Pomodoro method, you'll understand what we're talking about. It's also called the tomato timer, and you set it for a period of time for as long as you feel like you can focus and pay attention, and then it goes for 25 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever, and then you take a break. It schedules the break, and then you come back and you do another 25 minutes. So, what are some things that distract you? My cell phone, constant thoughts, Tetris, my cell phone talking to other people, people messaging me, personal matters, family, my phone, my pets, the mess in my space, all the other stuff I need to do being tired, hungry, or cold, loud noises, multiple voices, or clutter. Okay. So, which of these distractions is most likely to occur when you're approaching your selected task, right? So the thing that you want to do is not blame and shame yourself for the fact that your mind drifts off, because that's part of having ADHD. What you want to do is create a plan for your return. So give yourself a few seconds to look at what is happening around you or what you're working on. And instead of basically, elevating the stress, that you actually took some time that you had a little, space out, slow things down. And not don't panic or judge yourself for something that your brain does naturally. Instead, create a coping strategy that will guide you. Give yourself a minute to resettle and focus on read what you were doing. Give yourself the time that you need. And take a minute now in this Facebook Live to consider, what would a different coping strategy be for when I am in a drift, when I come back from a drift, than the thing that I'm doing now. Okay, so I have see lots of comments here. Let's see. What are things that distract you? Dogs. It would be easier to list what doesn't distract me. Thanks, Anna. Facebook, email, straightening up, checking up, worrying on my kid about my kids. If I'm home, TV or social media. If I'm not home, my cell phone, social media. ADHD child, ADHD spouse, environmental tasks needing to be done, exhaustion. I hear you. Thanks, Annie, for putting up the Pomodoro stuff. Distracted by time, noises, ideas, chores, being conflicted between two tasks. Phone, text, email notifications, apartment problems, leaks, or bugs. Self-defeating thoughts is what distracts me the most. Neely, I'm so glad you said this, because I would assume for most of us that there are self-defeating thoughts related to being someone who is distracted, or when we are distracted, and that those self-defeating thoughts kind of build on themselves and can make things worse. Rone, Netflix. Reading when I try to do my study break, I get consumed by the break activity. Right. And for that reason alone, you've got to have not just timers, but maybe some kind of accountability buddy who would help you kind of come back, working, on screen together. I'm doing some writing, and when I'm trying to work on a couple different projects, and I have a friend who's working on their projects, and we work, and then we maybe say, okay, hey, let's take a 5-minute break. I'll see you in 5 minutes. Go to the bathroom, get a cup of tea, and come back. Ticking clocks I find distracting also. It's like that, just sort of regular noise, dripping taps, electrical noises. Yes, because that can kind of take up some space in your brain, that you don't really have. And if you have any anxiety, that kind of sort of repetitive noise can make things worse. Yes, body double. Boredom can be distracting. Intrusive thoughts and ideas, then boom, I'm exhausted. Messages, calls, background noises, a bird at the window, fun tasks when a boring one should be what I'm doing. Okay. Some of these distractions sound like things we can control, like the phone and social media. Well, theoretically, yes, but it's hard for people. And so if you struggle with things like for your phone or social media, what can you do to put some blocks on things so that you're not doing it when you really actually don't need to be doing it? I encourage you to put, your social media on a completely different browser. That if you're working in Google, put things that are, fun things in Safari, and or so that you can't get to them as easily. There are all kinds of things to help you with this. And you might want to just do a search of, how do I manage social media, so it doesn't distract me? Using your senses. You're welcome. Okay. So we've now talked about different things that distract us, and we've talked about selecting and monitoring. We want to be able to think about what would a different coping strategy be than the thing that I'm using now, either when I drift off or when I come back from the drift. So if you have some ideas of what a new coping strategy might be for you, please put that up. Um, Shifting is the third type of focus, and shifting refers to moving very smoothly from one task to another. And this is where many folks with ADHD get waylaid. It's tough to navigate a change due to limited working memory, slower processing speed, and honestly, weaker emotional control. Frustration can build up quickly, and often rigidity sets in, making it tough to transition your attention to something else. In addition, worrying about forgetting something or not finishing it, or that it's not perfect, makes shifting concentration even harder. Um, so, when you're starting to feel anxious, particularly because anxiety and shifting go together, really very often, we want to reduce the worry through positive self talk. So, what happens is when kids are anxious in particular, and sometimes adults, is we want other people to offer us reassurance, to make things okay for us. And that actually isn't going to help you or your kids. Sometimes we need to do that, in the middle of a hurricane, of course. But, in terms of anxiety about doing things, what we have to learn to say to ourselves is, what have I done in the past that has helped me succeed? What has helped me get stuff done? And how can I apply that to what I'm doing right now? So, in addition to worrying about forgetting something, and other ways in which you're worried that you're not going to focus or you're not going to get it done in time or whatever it is, um, it's harder for you to move from one task to another naturally. Okay. And, sometimes that has to do with because you need a little more time to adjust to the new task. Your brain needs a mental warm up to really kind of shift your spotlight of attention over there. So we want to really give ourselves some permission that shifting from one thing to another can be frustrating. Now, multitasking, which is what a lot of people like to do, and particularly a lot of people with ADHD, actually doesn't exist in the brain. And it actually fatigues the brain because you pay attention to one thing and then you switch quickly to something else, and then you switch back to the first thing, and you need a mental warm up to deal with that first thing. So, when we're dealing with shifting, what I want you to try to do is to slow it down and to really focus on solo tasking, maybe dual tasking, but no more. So when you start to feel anxious, we want to remind yourself of a time in the past when you shifted an activity, when you changed it with flexibility, confidence, and competence. What can you say to yourself as you move on to something new that validates your efforting and maybe some of the discomfort you're feeling instead of doubting your ability? What internal resources or assistance from others has helped you in the past in such situations? Leave yourself a voice memo or a written note on your phone to describe the process of letting go of something, and what you need to let go of and what you want to remember about it for the future. Use technology to help you. That's what's great about it. If you have trouble with a warm up when you get to a new task, that's okay. Make a note in your phone how to switch from one task to another and give yourself some tips. That way, when you're struggling, you have something to go back to. So let's see what people are saying. Um, my mobile lives on silent a lot of the time. I've thought of taking apps off my mobile and to avoid it totally. Not a terrible idea. I just made an announcement in my roommate's group chat to remind them that I have my phone on do not disturb while working, but they expect me to check my phone 24/7. You know what? You're not going to do it. And if they're mad at you, that's okay. That's their issue, not yours. You're practicing good self care and healthy habits of working. Don't worry, Ruth. You can rewind, you can watch it on the replay. Neely, what are some ideas or tips to come back from fleeting and overwhelming thoughts so you can actually focus? So, this is a great question, Neely, and this is part of what we're talking about here. So, when you have fleeting or overwhelming thoughts, the thing that I think would really help you come back to the present is mindful breathing. Okay. Whether it's alternate nostril breathing, breathe in, breathe out, switch, breathe in, breathe out, or what I call triangle breathing. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 6, pause for 2 seconds on empty, and do, 3 or 4 cycles of this type of breathing. You need to arrive back to where you are from where you've been. And what happens to many people with ADHD is they realize they've drifted off, they're overwhelmed by shame and intense stress that they've missed things, and there's a kind of panic that sets in, and that's a physiological response, right? And so we have to deal with that physiological response. Settle the body, you can settle the mind. Thank you, Annie. um, Jax, yep. If I'm putting dishes away and my roommate says, "Come look at and pay attention to this," I have to finish putting the dish down or I can't think. So Jax, that's actually very healthy. You want to complete something before you move to the next thing rather than just jam it in. Now, for people who are neurotypical, maybe they can do that. Maybe some people with ADHD can do that. I know for me, I like to finish, I'd put the dish down or I'd put it in the dishwasher and say, wait a minute, I need to finish. I'll be there in a second. Nothing unless there's blood involved, really is an urgent issue. So we want to really take care of ourselves. I'm sure there are other kinds of urgent issues, but that's what popped in my head. Um, let's see. Don't worry, Neely. Glad you're here. Carly, yes, my daughter struggles if something isn't perfect, such as art, and becomes avoidance of her hobbies or even schoolwork. Right. So I've talked before about perfectionism. In fact, I did a whole webinar for Attitude earlier this year on perfectionism, I think, and we've addressed that in other Facebook Lives. Also on my website, I have a lot of stuff that I've written about that and other YouTube videos. So perfection is a way of controlling anxiety. It's a symptom. I want to make this just right so that something bad won't happen, so that I won't be judged critically, so that I can feel good about my work. And then if I can't make it perfect, I'm just going to give up. And what we want to teach our kids is that there is no perfection. I'm still learning this at my age. I'm a recovering perfectionist. We're human. We're going to mess up. Perfection is a myth. And the more that you try to make things perfect, or if you compare yourself to people online or on TV who look perfect, know that you're not comparing yourself to anything real, that's crafted. Everything is crafted, um, except me right now. I'm just being real and telling you that. Um, let's see. In the past, I had a temporal lobectomy that was due to epilepsy. As a result, both the surgery and the epilepsy, I struggle to concentrate and say things on impulse. My memory is so poor, as confirmed by cognitive tasks. The problem is that the problem that I'm having is that my neurologist believes that in order to organic personality disorder that I have ADHD. In contrast to this, my psychiatrist believes that the concentration, impulsiveness, memory problems are a result of the brain surgery. Oi, that's confusing. My psychiatrist therefore believes this is why ADHD pills haven't helped with the symptoms over the past 8 years. I think there's something to be said for that. And I really just want to say thank you for sharing your story. It sounds pretty hard. Um, uh, let's see. Why does it seem harder to deal with ADHD as a middle-aged adult than a younger adult? Well, for women, and there was recently a great article in Attitude about menopause and women and ADHD. Estrogen modulates a couple of our key neurotransmitters, acetylcholine, dopamine, and norepinephrine. And so it also, of course, affects serotonin. So as estrogen leaves the body in middle age for women through perimenopause, people who struggle already with issues of memory or follow through or reward or satisfaction or mood instability are going to have more of that. Um, thank you for asking a question about organic personality disorder. That's is too long an answer for me to give today at this time. So I'm going to address that different another time. So what is the fourth type of focus? And you all may be very familiar with this: hyperfocus. So hyperfocusing refers to tuning out the environment around you because you are completely absorbed in the task. Hyperfocus is a state in which everything else falls away, and the only thing that you are paying attention to and engaged with is the activity in the present moment. This differs from being in a flow state. When people are in a flow state, they're humming along, they're concentrating, but they aren't so zoomed into a task that they're unaware of their surroundings. And that's the difference. Hyperfocus can lead to intense periods of productivity or intense periods of stress because you might forget to eat or use the bathroom or sleep. So, for hyperfocus to be useful, you want to give yourself a scheduled screen free break. So, if you know that you like to hyperfocus, give yourself an hour to really dive in there and then set your phone, set a notification on your screen, use that tomato timer, and then take a forced break after an hour or an hour and a half or whatever the time is that you want to focus. After an hour and a half, the brain is kind of tired and it generally could use some water, maybe a change of scenery, maybe a snack. Uh, Going to the bathroom. So we want to be able to incorporate that. So we want to be able to set a timer and take a walk or maybe do some Sudoku or Wordle. Choose something that's pleasurable for you as your earned, break or reward for that hyper focus period. And you can do this also with any amount of time that you're working on something. It doesn't have to be hyper focus. But whatever you choose is pleasurable, but it's not going to drag you in. And that's why social media is really problematic because social media will drag you in and then you'll be hyper focused on that. So these pauses give you time to integrate the work that you've just completed and let your brain simmer with leftover ideas. So before you pause, though, you've done this work for an hour and a half. Before you pause, leave yourself right in the document that you're working on or you're drawing, note about where you want to go next or a post-it so that when you come back, you can return to where you are. You'll give yourself a few minutes to settle in. You'll look at what you've done just a little bit and you'll get back into it. So, learning to notice, manage, and improve your focus takes time, practice, and changing habits. Um, Develop a routine for when, where, and how long you work using timers so you can get a break from before your brain tires out. Um, Set realistic expectations for yourself and talk through potential obstacles with friends, colleagues, therapists, or a coach. Our goal, is doing more of what works, applying the focus that you have effectively and increasing it over time. So I see some more comments. We're going to wrap up in a few minutes. Uh, Technology is overwhelming. It sure can be. You're welcome, Jax. Louise, I tried using alarms, but other people in the office get annoyed, especially when I walk away and forget my phone. I hear you on that. These things here are very helpful. I will say that, and I write about this in my blog, which is focused on better productivity, what we're talking about today, and focus. That there's been some research that came out of the New York Times recently on brown noise and the benefit of brown noise. One of my clients has found this to be extremely helpful for me. If we did an experiment where she put it on so I could listen to it, and I felt like it was like taking Brillo pads to my skin. But for her, she's like, "Oh, this is great. It's taking up all that noise in my brain and I can really focus on what I'm doing." For me, I like to listen to some nice piano music. That kind of helps me. But whatever it is that works for you, maybe it's white noise or pink noise. This article in the New York Times about brown noise really talks about these different types of noises, and that could be very helpful. Yes, Sonia, organic is more about the brain instead of the mind. Carly, good idea. Mindful breathing. Can I ask how not to go off on long chats to take different paths? Yes. So, what I want to say to you, Carly, is less is more. So, you probably are receiving signals from people that they are spacing out when you're talking. They may look away, they may look down, they may look at their watch. Any signal that you're receiving is a sign that you've gone on too long. And so, what you might want to do is actually try to limit yourself to 2 or 3 sentences and then say, "Would you like to know more about this?" That gives them the option, or "Would you like to hear more?" And they might say, "Not right now, thanks, but I appreciate it." Or they might say, "Yes." So, try to talk in 3 sentence chunks if you can, just to start something different and see what happens. Yes, perfectionism. I can't focus on my husband when I'm hyper focusing on my phone and he gets angry. How can I make this better? Basically, if your husband is talking to you, put your phone down because your relationship with your husband and connecting with him is far more important than anything that's happening here. So put your phone down, say, "Wait 1 minute. I want to hear what you have to say. Wait a second. I want to put my phone down, stop what I'm doing." Ask for the pause that you need and then pay attention. Um, okay, so we're going to stop. It's difficult to distinguish. Yep. Both my children and myself are neurodivergent. We're a quirky bunch. That's okay. He probably loves you a lot, and is has adjusted to your quirkiness. Thank you for being here. You're welcome, Carly. Thank you so much. Um, oh, Ken is asking, how long should the pause be for a 90-minute productive period? I would say probably like 10 to 15 minutes. So that as then you could do another 90-minute period and then take a longer break of like an hour. So you have two good work chunks in. But if 15 minutes doesn't feel like long enough for you, um, then maybe you need something longer. For me, sometimes after I'm working for 90 minutes, I put my coat on, I make myself just walk, 4 houses down the block and come back just to get out of this particular room. Glad you're here, Stacy. Okay, Susan, I agree. Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Um, Okay, your partner won't put his phone down, not me. Oh, okay, Ruth. So then I think that's a conversation to say, which is, hey, when I'm talking to you, I'd like you to put your phone down. It hurts me that, you're still looking at your phone while I'm talking. It makes me feel like, I don't know, whatever, sad or, unimportant. And I know that's not how you feel, but I want to try to do something different. My lives, Carly, are well, this month we've had three in a row, 3 weeks in a row, but generally they're every other week. So once again, I'm just going to put in my free downloadable, which summarizes what I talked about. Thank you, Ruth. I appreciate your positive feedback. Um, for me, in terms of my ADHD traits, my ADHD traits are more around emotional stuff and time management. And those really kind of came to a head after I went through menopause, with perimenopause and menopause. For a lot of people, myself and other people included who are quite bright, are intelligence can mask some of these very strong some of these ADHD traits. And people can have ADHD traits and may or may not meet the diagnosis may not meet the criteria for a diagnosis, but may still benefit from the work that we do here. So welcome to everyone and thank you for coming. We will talk more about emotional stuff always. Thank you. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.